I'm typing this from my car in a tuxedo after literally walking out of my own wedding. I'm still in shock and not sure if I just made the biggest mistake of my life or narrowly escaped a disaster. Let me back up a bit. I'm a 28-year-old guy and, well, maybe was, the groom. My now probably ex-fiancée, Jenna, 27F, went full-on bridezilla today. It's like the stress of the wedding turned her into someone I didn't recognize. We're talking screaming at people, throwing things level meltdown. And it wasn't just her, my family, and her family basically had a brawl in the middle of the reception hall. Let me tell you the whole story, because I still can't believe any of it is real. From the moment we started wedding planning, Jenna became different. We've been together 3 years, and yes, she always liked things her way, but nothing too crazy. I mean, I knew she had a bit of a perfectionist streak. She's super organized, type A, that kind of thing. I love that about her, she got stuff done, you know? But as soon as we got engaged and started talking wedding, it was like a switch flipped. She had these insanely elaborate ideas, a $10,000 designer dress, imported flowers that weren't in season, a custom cake taller than me. We definitely don't have the money for all that. I'm a teacher, she's a graphic designer, decent jobs, but not crazy $50,000 wedding level. I tried to be supportive because I thought maybe she was just excited. I suggested we keep a reasonable budget, maybe DIY some things. She would agree initially. Then I'd find out she went behind my back and ordered $500 crystal vases or booked a horse-drawn carriage for us. It caused a lot of fights in the last few months. My mom offered to help with planning and paying, which in hindsight was a mistake because Jenna took that as an insult. She thought my mom was interfering and trying to control her wedding. Honestly, Mom was just trying to help us save money and not go into debt. But Jenna got really angry anytime my mom had an opinion. Even something small like suggesting a cheaper caterer led to Jenna ranting to me that, "Your mother wants to ruin our wedding because she thinks I'm not good enough for you." I tried to calm her down, but she started banning my mom from coming to certain appointments, like dress shopping and the cake tasting. That caused a huge fight between me and Jenna. I told her that was unfair. My mom is actually very chill and I wanted her involved. Jenna eventually let her come cake tasting, but iced her out the whole time. It was awkward as hell. That was just the start. Over the next weeks, Jenna's demands got, well, let's say specific and inflexible. For example, she demanded my sister dye her hair to match the other bridesmaids, who were all brunettes, because my sister's bright red hair would ruin the color palette of the wedding photos. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She was not. It turned into a big argument. My sister, who was going to be a bridesmaid, got so upset she actually considered dropping out of the wedding party. I had to beg both of them to compromise. Finally, Jenna allowed my sister to keep her hair, but insisted the bridesmaids all wear these huge floral hairpieces to balance the colors. Ridiculous, right? But at the time I was so desperate to keep the peace, I just went along with it. There were dozens of things like that. She had a meltdown when her maid of honor, her best friend Tara, couldn't attend a last-minute Sunday 6 a.m. emergency dress fitting. Seriously, 6 a.m. on a Sunday, because the seamstress was going on vacation later that day. Tara lives 2 hours away and has a toddler to take care of. And apparently, she wasn't able to drop everything and drive over at 4 a.m. to appease the bride. Jenna actually uninvited Tara from the wedding out of spite. I was horrified and told her she was overreacting, but she was in full my way or the highway mode. Next day, she cooled off and let Tara back in, after Tara profusely apologized even though she did nothing wrong, which I felt was insane. It was like walking on eggshells around her. So yeah, this was the pattern leading up to the big day. I half-jokingly told my best man, Rob, that if I ever act like a groomzilla, slap me, bro. He responded, "Dude, if you make it through this with your sanity, it's a miracle." Rob's been my friend since college, and he has been side-eyeing some of Jenna's behavior, but being supportive of me. I was venting to him a lot. He asked me more than once if I was sure I wanted to go through with this. To be honest, I had doubts, but I kept telling myself it was just wedding stress. That once the day was over, she'd go back to her normal self, the woman I fell in love with. I guess I was naive or in denial. Anyway, flash forward to today, our wedding day. It started bad and then went to absolute hell. This morning, I woke up at my buddy Rob's place. I stayed at his house last night because it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding. And also, honestly, I wanted a bit of space from Jenna to avoid any pre-wedding fights. I already had like 10 texts from Jenna. The first few were like normal, "Good morning. Can't believe it's today" stuff. But then at 7:15 a.m., she sends me this long, angry text, basically chewing me out for not being at the venue already. Our ceremony was scheduled for noon, by the way. She said I needed to help the groomsmen set up some decorations and that I obviously didn't care about details. Mind you, we had hired a decorator against my wishes because dollar, but she insisted, and there was staff to do that. And my groomsmen were already on it anyway. It felt so unnecessary. But I shrugged it off, texted back on my way soon. Instead of waiting for me to show up in, say, half an hour, she kept blowing up my phone with questions. Did you pick up the programs? Yes, yesterday. Where is the marriage license? With me, obviously. Are you bringing a cooler for water for the wedding party? I mean, that was planned for months, yes. I eventually just stopped responding so I could shower and get ready. By the time I got to the venue around 9, she was in full swing bossing around everyone. The wedding planner, the decorators, my groomsmen, her bridesmaids, the caterers, everyone. I could hear her the moment I walked in. She was literally yelling at a florist for bringing the wrong shade of pink roses. She wanted blush roses and they delivered baby pink or something. I saw the florist looking near tears, and I had to step in and tell Jenna to calm down. She snapped. I told you this florist was incompetent. Now the whole theme is ruined. I looked at the roses honestly. They looked fine. Beautiful even. Everyone else thought so too. My best man made a joke that only Jenna could tell the difference. Jenna did not find that amusing. She shot daggers at both of us and hissed that we were undermining her on her wedding day. So Rob backed off and winked at me like, stay cool. Then her mom got involved. Oh boy. For context, Jenna's relationship with her mom is complicated. Her mom, Sandra, is a piece of work herself, very image conscious. Always has to have the fanciest everything, loves gossip and drama. I see where Jenna gets some of it. Sandra was actually egging her on about the flowers. Like, this is unacceptable. We'll get a refund. Don't worry, honey. Instead of calming Jenna down, her mom basically doubled the outrage. So then Jenna started demanding the florist go back and find blush roses or just dye them or something. The florist left in a hurry, looking terrified. I later found out the florist burst into tears outside. One of the groomsmen had to comfort her and tell her it'll be okay. We'd pay extra for any trouble. So yeah, that sucked. I apologized to the wedding planner and others for Jenna's behavior. The planner was like, I deal with a lot of brides, don't worry. But even she looked like this was beyond the usual. Next issue, my family arrives around 10. My mom and dad, my sister, the one with red hair, and my grandma. She's 78 and uses a wheelchair. We had arranged accessible seating for grandma and everything well in advance. I hadn't told Jenna, because why would I need to? Except apparently Jenna didn't want my grandma at the ceremony. This still blows my mind. Grandma is the sweetest old lady and was so excited for me. She practically raised me when I was little. But Jenna in her BRIDEZILLA state had this insane notion that my grandma would bring everyone down because she's old and in a wheelchair, which doesn't look good in pictures, and she thought grandma would be a bother because she has medical needs. She's actually pretty healthy aside from difficulty walking. But I had no idea Jenna felt this way until this morning. So I see my grandma and family arrive. I go over to greet them. They're all dressed up and excited. I notice my grandma looks a little upset. My mom pulls me aside and says something like, we need to talk now. She tells me that when they arrived, one of the coordinators, venue staff, told them the bride had given instructions that my grandma was to sit in the far back corner during the ceremony, not near the front where we had originally planned to have her. And that Jenna had also expressed concerns to the coordinator about grandma possibly causing a scene. I was like, what? What scene? I was furious and embarrassed. My mom was livid, rightfully so, and grandma was hurt, but trying not to show it. So I march over to Jenna, who was at that moment freaking out over the lighting being too dim. It was fine. I calmly but firmly asked her, did you tell the staff to put grandma in the back out of the way? Jenna immediately gets defensive, saying the coordinator misunderstood and that she just thought grandma would be more comfortable away from the loud music up front. I knew that was BS. She then said something like, this is our day and I don't want it ruined by anyone, even well-meaning family. Your mom and sister have been against me from the start, trying to insert themselves. I was like, what are you talking about? They love you. What's wrong with you? She went off on me about my family supposedly disrespecting her wishes throughout the planning. This is where the family's feud aspect really blew up. Unbeknownst to me until that moment, apparently Jenna and my mom had a confrontation via email a week ago about the rehearsal dinner. My mom wanted a particular dish served, a family recipe or something, since she was paying for the dinner. Jenna told the caterer not to make it because she thought it was gross. My mom found out, and they argued. I guess they kept it from me because they didn't want to stress me out, but clearly Jenna was still mad. So she started ranting. Your mother has been trying to upstage me at every turn. She even tried to force that disgusting casserole into my rehearsal dinner menu. I was like, That casserole was a family tradition, and also you could have just let it be on the menu along with everything else. It's not a big deal. We were hissing at each other in a corner, like not to alert all guests, but intense. Her mom, Sandra, sees this and comes over, demanding to know why I'm making the bride cry. Yes, Jenna had started crying angry tears. I tell Sandra I'm upset that Jenna is treating my family poorly, especially my grandma. And Sandra freaking defends Jenna, saying something like, well, if your family had respected the bride's wishes to begin with, none of this would be happening. This is her day, not theirs. I'm like, her wishes to exclude my grandmother? Seriously? And Sandra goes, it's not about exclusion, it's about keeping things serene. Whatever that meant. Things were getting heated, and my mom noticed and walked over to us, asking if something was wrong. Before I could explain, Jenna literally yelled in my mom's face, you are trying to ruin my wedding. Just leave if you're going to cause trouble. My mom was stunned and looked like she was about to cry. I'm like, whoa, what's wrong with you? She's not trying to ruin anything. My dad stepped in and said, let's all calm down here. And Jenna actually snapped at my dad too, telling him stay out of this. This is between me and your wife. It was so nasty and condescending. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. At that point, my mom had enough and said, fine, if you don't want us here, we can leave. And she motioned to my sister and grandma. That made me panic. The idea of my family actually walking out of my wedding because of my bride? Not okay. I begged my mom to please stay. Jenna then screams, see? That's what they do. They make everything about them. Mind you, a few of our guests, including some wedding party, started to notice the commotion. Her bridesmaids ushered Jenna to a side room to cool her off, and my parents went outside to get some air. Mom was crying at this point. I was left standing there in the middle of this chaos, feeling completely overwhelmed and angry and heartbroken all at once. I honestly took a minute to just breathe and think, is this actually happening? We had about 20 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start. Guests were arriving and taking their seats. I found my best man Rob and told him shit was hitting the fan. He had seen some of it, but was trying to manage groomsmen and also apparently one of the bartenders who said something about a keg being missing, because why not add a keg crisis on top of everything? I vented to him that I didn't know what to do. Rob, being the good friend he is, looked me in the eye and said, you don't have to go through with this, man. I immediately said, no, I'm just frustrated. We're both stressed. He just patted my shoulder and said, whatever you decide, I'll support you. But not gonna lie, your family didn't deserve that. And neither do you. I had no time to even process replying because suddenly one of the bridesmaids, not Tara, a different friend, burst in on us saying, we have an emergency. Jenna is saying she won't walk down the aisle until your mom leaves. What the actual hell? I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. According to this bridesmaid, who was trying to remain neutral, Jenna was in the bridal suite literally refusing to proceed unless my mother, the mother of the groom, left the venue entirely. She was apparently convinced my mom would make a scene or upstage her somehow during the ceremony. I told the bridesmaid that was insane and absolutely not. My mom is not leaving. Bridesmaid went back to relay that. At this point, I was just done. I marched over to the bridal suite area, but one of the groomsmen, bless him, held me back and said maybe I should take a second and not go in angry. Probably good advice. So I didn't go in guns blazing. Instead, I sent Tara, the MOH, who by now had arrived and heard the drama, to talk to Jenna first, since Tara is like the one person who might talk sense into her. While Tara is in with Jenna, I'm pacing the hallway, sweating in my suit, feeling like I'm about to have a panic attack. My dad came over and said maybe we should just start and hope Jenna cools off. But I was like, she literally is refusing to start. Dad shook his head in disbelief. Finally, maybe 10 minutes after ceremony start time, Jenna comes out of the suite. Her eyes are red like she'd been crying, but her makeup is fixed. I later learned the makeup artist had to redo parts because she cried it off. She walks right up to me and says quietly, fine, they can stay, but they better behave. It's like she was doing me a huge favor letting my family be at my and her wedding. I was so upset but also relieved she seemed ready to just do this, because I honestly just wanted to get through the ceremony without further drama. So we start super late. Guests had been sitting there awkwardly. We told them, small delay, thanks for your patience, etc. The ceremony starts, music playing. I'm at the altar, arch thing, with the officiant and my groomsmen. I see my mom and family had taken their seats in their rightful place near front, because screw that back corner crap. I insisted they sit where they were supposed to. Grandma was a bit confused but smiling at me supportively. I was thankful they stayed. Bridesmaids come down the aisle, the little flower girl, all that. Then Jenna enters on her dad's arm. Her stepdad, not the estranged father. Stepdad basically raised her. She looks beautiful, I'll admit. For a second, I felt that surge of love and was almost ready to forgive and forget the insanity from earlier, hoping it was all just nerves. We exchanged glances at the altar, and she actually smiled at me, and I thought maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay once we said our vows. But of course not. The universe had other plans. We got through about half the ceremony. Vows were being said. I said mine, which I'd written myself, and she teared up, in a good way, hearing them. She was about to start hers, and that's when I noticed a bit of a commotion toward the back of the tent. We had an outdoor tented ceremony. I saw a man, kinda older, stumbling a little and loudly whispering something. At first I couldn't see well, the lights were bright on us, but within a few seconds I recognized him. It was my Uncle Gary. For context, Gary is my dad's estranged brother, kind of the black sheep. He wasn't invited because he has a history of causing scenes when drunk, and he wasn't really close to us. My dad explicitly did not invite him, so I was shocked to see him there. I'm not sure how he even knew the details of the wedding. Maybe another relative who was invited told him. Anyway, Uncle Gary apparently had shown up late and was a bit drunk already. He was trying to find a seat and for whatever reason decided to make his entrance during the vows of all times. I tried to ignore it and focus on Jenna because she was starting her vows and looked annoyed at the distraction. But then Gary loudly says, "That's my nephew up there. That's my boy," or something like that, like he was cheering me on at a football game. People in the audience started to murmur. I saw my dad turn bright red and motion for Gary to be quiet. The officiant paused, because obviously this interruption was not ignorable. I forced a smile and said something like, "Sorry, one moment." Jenna looked at me with pure rage in her eyes. She hissed, "What is going on? Who is that?" I whispered, "My uncle, he wasn't invited." "I'm so sorry." Jenna's face turned a shade of red I have never seen. She was livid. My mom stood up, and along with my dad, they were trying to quietly get Uncle Gary to either sit down or leave. But Uncle Gary, being drunk and belligerent, started arguing softly, but audibly like, "I have a right to watch my nephew get married." I was mortified. This was exactly the kind of thing I was afraid of with my family. Albeit it wasn't my mom or sis causing it, but an uninvited drunk uncle is just as bad, if not worse. Suddenly, Jenna just snaps. She turns around in front of everyone and yells, "Get him out of here now." This is exactly what I was afraid of with your trashy family. Yes, she said, "trashy family," in front of all our guests, and into the microphone that was recording everything no less. I saw my parents' face fall. Gasps from everyone. I was stunned. My dad and a couple groomsmen quickly escorted Uncle Gary out. He was still protesting. Meanwhile, the officiant was like, "Let's calm down." But Jenna wasn't calming down. She was trembling with anger, breathing heavily. Instead of waiting for things to settle, she then turns to my mom, who was still standing and apologizing quietly to us, and shouts, "I told you to not let anything ruin this, and you couldn't even do that." My mom looked like she'd been slapped. She quietly said, "It wasn't our fault." And in that moment, I saw Jenna just lose all composure, and she screams, "Shut up. Just shut up. I hate you people." She threw her bouquet on the ground. It was chaos. Some guests actually thought maybe it was part of a weird comedic bit or something. But no, it was real. I felt like I had left my own body and was watching a disastrous movie. My first instinct was to try to calm her. I put my hand on her arm and said, "Hey, it's okay. Let's just get through the vows. We can continue." She yanks her arm away from me and yells, "No, I won't continue until they're gone." I assumed she meant my parents, maybe even other family. At that point, I'd had enough. She was making a fool of herself, me, and my family in front of everyone we know, and all over something that wasn't even directly our fault. I understood her being upset at Uncle Gary's interruption, but her reaction and words, it crossed a line. So I just sort of exhaled and said quietly, "All right then, if that's how it's gonna be, I'm done." Jenna was like, "What do you mean done?" And loud enough for all to hear. Though I didn't yell, I just spoke firmly. I said, "This wedding is over. I'm not doing this anymore." There was a collective gasp from the audience. I'll never forget the look on her face, shock, then fury. She started screaming, "Are you kidding me? You can't do this." And she actually grabbed me by the jacket as if to physically restrain me from leaving. Our officiant, the groomsmen, and her stepdad all stepped forward like they might have to break up a fight. I gently removed her hands and just said, "I'm sorry, but you have said and done too much today. This is not okay." Or something along those lines. Honestly, it's a blur. Then I turned and walked off down the aisle. Yup, I literally walked away from my own wedding in front of everyone. As I stormed off, I heard her screaming and crying behind me. Her voice was this mix of rage and desperation. "Get back here. How dare you?" It was awful. Her mom yelled something at me like calling me a coward or whatnot. I didn't care at that moment. I just needed to be away. My family followed me out. My mom was crying, saying, "I'm so sorry." I told her, "I'm sorry you had to go through that." My dad was angry, but at Jenna, not me. He said something like, "Good riddance," under his breath. We got outside the venue. We were at a country club type place, and I just kept walking toward the parking lot. Rob, best man, ran after me and was like, "Hey man, let's just get you out of here." He got me into his car, and we drove off. I left my own wedding. I was shaking and my heart was pounding out of my chest. In the car, Rob asked me if I was okay, and I just started bawling like a child. I hadn't cried in years, but I did then. He patted my back and just said, "It's gonna be okay. This was probably for the best." We went maybe a mile down the road, then pulled over at a park. I sat on a bench in full wedding suit, head in hands, just trying to process what I had done. Guests were probably still at the venue, gossiping and shocked. I had all these missed calls and texts on my phone. Many from Jenna, some from her mom, some from unknown numbers, maybe relatives. I didn't look at any of them yet. Rob insisted I come back to his house. So I did. On the way, I finally glanced at texts. Jenna had left a string of texts alternating between furious, "You coward, how could you embarrass me like that in front of everyone?" Pleading, "Please come back. We can fix this. Please don't do this." And downright unhinged. "If you don't come back, you'll regret this, I promise." Her mom texted me once calling me a disgraceful asshole. Her dad, stepdad, even texted saying he understands I'm upset, but to please not make any final decisions yet. We got to Rob's house, and he brought out a six-pack of beer, sat with me while I finally called my parents. They were on their way home. They had left immediately after me. Mom was still crying, but said she just wants me to be okay. Dad said they'd support whatever I decided, but that in his opinion, that girl showed her true colors today. My sister was apparently ranting in the background about how she knew something like this would happen. Now it's late evening. I'm at Rob's, phone blowing up, and I'm supposed to be married right now? Or at a reception? Instead, I'm hiding out, humiliated and angry and heartbroken. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, and it turned into a literal nightmare. I don't know what happens next. I haven't formally spoken to Jenna yet beyond some texts. I don't know if I'm officially calling off the engagement or what. All I know is I couldn't stand there and let her treat my family and everyone like that and treat me like that. I loved her, or at least the person she used to be, but what I saw today, I just can't marry that. Anyway, I just needed to get this all out. I'm utterly exhausted and feel like I might be in mild shock. Do you think I was wrong to walk out? I feel kind of guilty for the public humiliation, but at the same time, she was way out of line. I'm torn up and could really use some outside perspective on how to even begin to deal with this. Update 1. Next day. First off, I want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support and advice on my original post. I honestly expected maybe a few people to read it, but it blew up. Reading your comments last night, and yes, early this morning because I couldn't sleep, has been surreal. A lot of you said some version of better to call it off now than divorce later, and I know you're right. It's just a hard pill to swallow. Anyway, here's what's happened since I posted. I eventually crashed on my buddy Rob's couch sometime around 3 a.m. I woke up to about 100 notifications on my phone. Many were Reddit, you guys, and many were texts or missed calls. Jenna left me voicemails ranging from sobbing apologies to furious, "How could you humiliate me?" rants. I didn't have the strength to listen to more than a few seconds of each. Her emotional whiplash was giving me whiplash. Her mom also called a bunch, I didn't answer, and left one voicemail essentially blaming me for traumatizing her daughter. That one pissed me off, so I deleted it. My own mom texted saying they loved me and to please come over for breakfast so we could talk and so she could hug me. I took her up on that. So around 8 a.m., I headed to my parents' house. Luckily, Rob lives only 20 minutes away. When I got there, my parents, sister, and even grandma were all waiting with open arms. It was emotional, I won't lie. I broke down crying again as soon as my mom hugged me. Grandma was holding my hand telling me, "It's okay, sweetie." It really hit me then that I might have lost a wife, but I still had my family. The same family Jenna tried to push away. And thank God I do, because they've been my rock today. We sat at the kitchen table, and they gently asked what my plan was. I said, "I don't think I can marry her after all that. But I feel awful, and I'm not sure how to even face her." My mom, still pretty hurt by what happened, said, "You have nothing to feel awful about. She did this to herself." My sister was, unsurprisingly, more blunt. "You seriously aren't thinking of still marrying her, right? After she went full Godzilla on all of us." I said, "No, I'm not, but it's complicated. My dad just nodded and said, "We support you, whatever you need to do." We talked about logistics. I have an apartment lease with Jenna. We moved in together last year. All my clothes, stuff, etc. are there. Also, there's the matter of all the wedding expenses and vendor contracts. My mom, who used to work in events, suggested I contact the venue and vendors ASAP to at least let them know the wedding was off. The reception obviously didn't happen after I walked out, and we had things booked like a DJ, catering, etc. So I spent part of the morning making tough phone calls. It was embarrassing telling these vendors that, yes, the wedding didn't happen. To my surprise, most of them were really kind. The venue manager said she suspected something was wrong when everyone left early, and she hoped everything works out for me. The caterer actually only charged us for the deposit and not the full amount, which is merciful. Still a lot of money lost, though. The DJ was sympathetic and gave me a 50% refund. The florist, poor lady. I called personally to apologize for how she was treated. She ended up crying on the phone, saying she had never experienced a bride as cruel as Jenna in 20 years of doing this. I apologized again and said I wouldn't blame her if she kept the deposit, which she reluctantly did. So yeah, financially this sucks, but emotionally at least these people didn't pile on. The big looming issue. I had to figure out how / when to talk to Jenna. She was blowing up my phone all morning with texts like, "Please come home, we can talk this out, and we can still fix this, I love you, please," alternating with, "I can't believe you did that to me, and my parents are threatening to sue you for what you pulled." Not even sure what they think they can sue me for, breaking her heart? There's no law against that last I checked. By early afternoon, I decided I needed to go back to the apartment at least to grab some essentials and also to face Jenna eventually. I didn't want her coming to my parents' house or something if I kept dodging. So I texted her, "I'm coming by the apartment at 2. Will you be there?" She responded immediately, "Yes, I'll be here. Please, let's talk." I admit I was extremely nervous driving over. I half expected to find all my clothes burned on the lawn or something. I also expected her parents might be there. To be safe, I asked Rob to come with me, just to have backup and in case I needed a witness to anything insane. He agreed, but waited in the car in the parking lot when we arrived, to give me some privacy but be nearby if needed. When I walked into the apartment, it was eerily quiet. For a second I thought maybe she wasn't there, but then I saw her, sitting on the couch, still in her silk honeymoon robe. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen from crying. There were mascara streaks on her cheeks. She'd obviously been through the ringer. Part of me, the sucker who loved her, felt a wave of sympathy and sadness. But I held firm internally, remembering how my mom's face looked when Jenna yelled at her. She stood up when I came in and just said softly, "Hi." I said hi back. Then neither of us spoke for a few painfully long seconds. Finally, I said, "I came to get some of my things, and we should probably talk." She nodded, gestured for me to sit. I sat in the armchair. She sat on the edge of the couch, like she wanted to be close but was afraid to approach. There was a tissue clutched in her hand. She started, "I'm so sorry for yesterday, for everything." And then she started full-on crying. It wasn't the rage cry from the wedding. This seemed more like shame and despair. I didn't say anything yet, just let her talk. She went on through sobs. I don't know what came over me. I was just so stressed, and I felt like nothing was going right. I know I handled it horribly. I've never been that upset in my life, and I lost it. I'm ashamed. She was speaking in a rush, like she needed to vomit out all these apologies before I could respond. I finally said, "I understand being stressed, but you said and did really hurtful things." She nodded vigorously. I know. I was awful. I can't take it back, but I want to make it up to you. To your family. They must hate me now." I didn't confirm or deny that, but yeah, right now they kind of do. I said, "They were really hurt, especially my mom and grandma. And you basically put me in an impossible position." At this point, her tone shifted slightly. She went from just apologetic to trying to justify a bit. "Your uncle showing up like that. That was a breaking point for me. I felt ambushed. You know how I was worried something would go wrong, and then it did." I said, "But you called my family trashy in front of everyone." She looked down, ashamed. I know. I lost control. I swear I didn't mean it. I was just so angry in the moment." She inched closer and reached for my hand. "We can still have a life together. We can elope or do a small ceremony. We don't have to even involve anyone else if that's what it takes. I just want you. I don't care about the wedding anymore." Here's the thing. Hearing her say she didn't care about the wedding anymore felt too little too late. She had cared way too much about it up until it blew up in her face. It was hard for me to believe she suddenly doesn't care. It felt like she was saying what she thought I wanted to hear to get me back. I gently pulled my hand away. I said, I really think we need time apart right now. She immediately panicked. No, please, we can work through this. We love each other, don't throw that away. I told her I do love her, but I don't love the person she was the past few months, and especially yesterday. I said I needed to see some serious changes and genuine efforts on her part to even consider moving forward. I also brought up that maybe we should consider couples therapy or her individual therapy. A lot of commenters here suggested she might have underlying issues or that we should get counseling. And honestly, I agree something deeper might be going on with her. Well, at the mention of therapy, she got defensive. I'm not crazy, I don't need therapy. I just needed things to go right. I sighed and said, Jenna, things can't always go perfectly. How you deal with it matters. And you didn't deal with it well. At all. She started crying again, quieter this time. I know I messed up, but we can still fix this, right? She looked at me with these wide, desperate eyes. This was one of the hardest moments, because part of me wanted to just say, yes, we can, let's forget everything. But I knew that would be a lie. So I said, I don't think we can just pretend this didn't happen. It happened, and it's serious. I'm not sure I can move past it. I was as gentle as I could be. She then started getting angry through the tears. So that's it? I make one mistake and you leave me. I couldn't believe she called that sequence of events one mistake. I replied, with a bit of edge, it was a series of very big mistakes and hurtful choices. And I didn't leave you for one mistake. I left a situation that had become, well, toxic. She threw the tissue on the floor and raised her voice a bit. It wouldn't have been toxic if your family had just done what I asked. They kept defying me and causing problems. And there it was, her still blaming my family. So you think you were justified yelling at my mom and trying to kick my grandma to the back? I shot back. She went quiet again and just whispered, no, that was wrong. I already said I'm sorry. I realized we were just going in circles. She would apologize, then shift blame or make excuses, then apologize again. It was exhausting, and it showed me that maybe she still didn't fully get it. Finally, I said as calmly as possible, I think we should call off the engagement. At least for now. I phrased it a bit softer than an outright breakup, but I definitely meant it as a breakup. Jenna's face went pale, and then she just broke. She started sobbing uncontrollably and saying no, 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 over and over. She actually kneeled on the floor and wrapped her arms around my legs, begging me, please, don't do this, please. It was gut-wrenching. I had to pry her arms off me. I was starting to tear up too. I said, voice shaking, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't, Jenna. Not after what happened. She then snapped from begging to furious in a second. Her mood swings were giving me whiplash. She stood up and screamed, fine, get out then, and she yanked her engagement ring off her finger and hurled it at me. It hit my chest and fell onto the floor. You want it back so bad? Take it, she shouted. I was stunned and just kind of frozen. She kept going. You're just going to abandon me after everything? You're no saint either. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Do you know how humiliating that was? Everyone is talking about me now. She was absolutely hysterical again. At this point, her apartment door opened. We had neighbors across the hall we are friendly with. The neighbor poked her head in, probably to see if someone was being murdered from all the screaming. She looked alarmed and asked if everything was okay. I quickly said, we're fine, sorry for the noise, and gently closed the door on her. Jenna had slumped onto the couch, head in her hands, crying more quietly now. I picked up the engagement ring from the floor. It was a surreal moment, seeing that symbol of our promise now just a piece of jewelry in my hand with no meaning. I didn't even know what to do with it. I ended up just placing it on the coffee table. I said quietly, I'll come back for my things later. I think it's best if we have some space. She didn't respond, just kept sobbing. As I turned to leave, she suddenly said in a broken voice, how can you do this? I thought you loved me. I felt a lump in my throat the size of a golf ball. I just said, I did. I do. But I can't marry you like this. I'm sorry. And I walked out as she cried into the couch cushion. Walking back to the car, I felt like absolute crap. Rob saw my face and immediately got out and gave me a hug. I just shook with a mix of anger, sorrow, relief, everything. He drove me back to my parents' place, and I've been here since, sorting through emotions. Since that meeting, Jenna has been relatively quiet. She sent a long text an hour ago basically again apologizing for getting angry and saying she'll always love me and she'll be here waiting if I change my mind. I haven't responded. I need to not be sucked back by guilt or pity. I have to remind myself of how bad the situation got. Her parents, on the other hand, are not quiet. Her mom has called my parents' house phone twice. My mom didn't answer and left a message essentially blaming me for ruining an innocent girl's life and calling me a spineless boy controlled by his mother, which is rich, considering what actually happened. My mom wanted to call her back and give her a piece of her mind, but Dad suggested we just let them yell into the void and not engage right now. I also heard from a mutual friend that Jenna's mom has been ranting on Facebook, making it seem like I got cold feet out of nowhere and just bailed, painting Jenna as the victim of a heartless groom. Thankfully, many of those who were at the wedding saw what really happened. A few of my friends have defended me in the comments, I hear. I don't want to look at it, honestly. Tara, the MOH, Jenna's friend, texted me earlier too. She mostly said she's so sorry for how everything went down and that she knows how out of character this was for Jenna. She said she had never seen her act like that and suspects the pressure from her mom and the wedding planning just made her snap. I didn't go into detail with Tara, just thanked her for being a good friend to Jenna and also for trying to help at the wedding. She said she'd keep checking on Jenna too, which oddly makes me feel better knowing someone is making sure she doesn't do anything crazy or harmful. As for me, I'm not great, but I have a solid support system. I'm going to stay with my parents for a bit. I'm taking a week off work to get my head on straight. Also going to look into seeing a therapist myself, just to work through this because, man, this is a lot. To be honest, I oscillate between heartbreak and anger and relief. Heartbreak because I did love the girl I thought I was going to marry. Anger for how she treated the people I care about, and frankly how she treated me too. Relief because a part of me knows this marriage could have been hell if this is how she handles conflict and stress. Right now, I'm leaning towards this engagement being over for good. I'm not making any official announcements beyond telling close friends and family, and I guess now here. I need to figure out living arrangements, splitting up whatever stuff we shared, etc. One step at a time. A lot of you asked what I want in the end. I think what I want is peace and to not feel like I'm in an emotional war zone. Yesterday and today have been absolute chaos. I just want some calm. I'll update again when I sort out more, especially if there's any more drama, which, knowing the players involved, there probably will be. For now, I'm going to take a nap. I'm running on fumes. Thank you all again for the support. It means more than you know. Update 2. 1 month later. Hey everyone. I'm back with what should be my final update on this whole wedding fiasco. It's been about a month since I noped out of my own ceremony, and I wanted to let you all know how things turned out. Some of it was pretty unexpected, but I'm happy to report that I'm in a much better place now. First off, living arrangements. I officially moved out of the apartment I shared with Jenna. For the past month, I've been crashing with my parents and then a couple weeks with Rob, best man/best bro, but I finally signed a lease on a new place of my own. I coordinated with Jenna to collect the rest of my stuff from our old apartment 2 weeks ago. We did this when she wasn't home. Tara, her MOH, was there to let me in and supervise, which I appreciated. It was quick and drama-free. I got my clothes, personal items, and some furniture that was mine. I left anything that we bought together or that was clearly hers, like all the fancy kitchenware she chose. I figured let her keep it. We also sorted out the remaining wedding stuff. There were boxes of wedding decorations, party favors, etc. I told her through email she could keep or sell them. I didn't care. My only request was to have a few photos of us together from happier times that were on our walls. I want to keep those memories, even if things went bad. She agreed and even left a little box of our old mementos for me, like a movie ticket from our first date, some cards I'd given her. That made me cry, not gonna lie. It was bittersweet picking that box up. On the financial side, it's been messy but manageable. We had some joint savings intended for the wedding/honeymoon. Thankfully, we hadn't fully paid the venue or caterer, deposits only. We mutually agreed to split the lost deposits. She actually offered to cover more since, in her words, this was mostly my fault. I was surprised by that level of ownership. I declined her offer, though I don't want to financially punish her. I'm just glad we won't be entangled going forward. We canceled the honeymoon bookings, got some airline credit and partial refunds. Also, I got the engagement ring back. After that day when she threw it at me, I left it on the table. A few days later, she texted asking if I wanted it. I said if she wasn't going to wear it, I'd like it back. It was my grandmother's ring, something I probably should have mentioned earlier. She mailed it to me, along with a short note apologizing again for everything. I'm relieved to have the ring. It's a family heirloom and not something I wanted lost in this mess. Now, the most unexpected part. Jenna and I actually sat down and talked, calmly, face to face. And it was surprisingly healing. About 3 weeks after the wedding blow-up, Jenna reached out and asked if we could meet for coffee. At first, I was very hesitant. The wounds were still fresh. But Tara, who I've been in occasional contact with, encouraged me, saying that Jenna had been going to therapy and was making genuine progress in understanding how things went so wrong. I decided to give it a shot, if only to get some closure. We met at a quiet cafe on a Sunday afternoon. I was nervous as hell walking in and seeing her already sitting there. But she looked different. Not physically, she looked pretty much like she always did, maybe a little thinner and tired. It was her demeanor. She looked humble, if that makes sense. She gave me a small sad smile and a little wave. As soon as I sat down, she said, "Before anything, I just want to say thank you for agreeing to meet. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see." I told her it's okay, and we can just talk. What followed was a very honest conversation. She told me she's been seeing a therapist twice a week since about a week after the wedding. She said it opened her eyes to how much stress and her mom's influence had warped her thinking. She actually said, "I was becoming my mother, and I hate who she is in a lot of ways." That was a jaw-drop moment for me, hearing her say that out loud. She explained that Sandra, her mom, had always been controlling and image-obsessed, and in the pressure of the wedding, Jenna fell into the same pattern without realizing it fully. None of this excuses her actions, her words, but it helped her understand why she snapped. She apologized, genuinely, for everything. Not the weepy, frantic apology of before, but a clear, sincere apology. She said she was especially sorry for how she treated my family. Apparently, as part of her therapy or personal steps, she actually wrote my mom and even my grandma a handwritten letter apologizing to each of them. I confirmed this later. My mom showed me the letter. It was actually really heartfelt, and my grandma got one too, which touched me deeply. I was honestly speechless for a bit. I told her I appreciated it, and that it meant a lot to me and my family. I also apologized for the pain and embarrassment the whole situation caused her. I admitted I wasn't perfect either. I probably should have confronted issues earlier or communicated better before it got to a breaking point. We talked about the social media fallout. Apparently, she ended up deleting her Facebook for now because some people, even strangers once the story spread locally, were harassing her and calling her a psycho bride after someone, not me, maybe a guest, described the scene online. She was humiliated and hurt by that, but she said she knew she brought it on herself. I told her I never spoke a word about it publicly, aside from on Reddit anonymously. She said she believed me and wasn't blaming me at all. We parted on surprisingly good terms. We even wished each other well. There were tears, yes, but more of a sad, understanding kind. In the end, she said something like, "I hope one day you find someone who brings out the best in you and that you have the peaceful life you want." I wished her happiness too and told her I truly hope therapy helps her find herself again, the sweet version of her that I loved. We gave each other a hug. It was actually really hard letting go at the end. In that moment, I remembered all the good times. But we let go, and we said goodbye. I walked away from that meetup feeling lighter. It gave me the closure I didn't realize I desperately needed. I'm not saying everything is tied up in a neat bow. It's not. I'm still working through feelings of loss and what-ifs. But I'm at peace with my decision. My family has slowly come around to forgiving Jenna as well, especially after she sent those apology letters. My mom actually wrote a short reply to Jenna, basically saying she appreciated the apology and wished her well too. So, as far as I'm concerned, the feud is over. My family and I are good again, no lingering resentment on our side. They just want me to be happy. As for her family, well, her mom is apparently still bitter. No shocker there. I heard from Tara that Jenna is low contact with her mom right now because Sandra kept bad-mouthing me and trying to play the victim of the runaway groom card, which Jenna now refuses to entertain. That felt oddly satisfying, to know Jenna is standing up to her mom and not letting her twist the story. It's like she's breaking that cycle of craziness. Good for her. So what's next for me? I'm focusing on myself for a while. I actually went back on a dating app just to dip my toes in. No serious dating yet, just chatting. It's weird thinking of starting over, but also a little exciting. I'm also hitting the gym again and planning a short trip with some buddies, a post-not-wedding vacation, as my sister calls it. The guys jokingly said we should have a freedom party on the day I would have returned from the honeymoon. Honestly, I might take them up on that, just to close this chapter with some laughter. Looking back, this whole thing was absolutely wild. Not how I envisioned my life going at 28. But I'm grateful I learned the truth before making a bigger mistake. I'm grateful for my awesome family and friends who had my back. And I'm grateful to all of you who gave me perspective when I was too deep in the situation to see clearly. The ending of this story is not a wedding, but it is a lesson learned and a fresh start for both me and Jenna, I think. Unexpectedly, the person who was my Bridezilla ex-fiancé ended up showing me she can change, at least a little, and while we won't be together, I feel content knowing she's getting help and that she regrets what happened. That's more closure than most people get, honestly. So yeah, I guess this is the end of the saga. Not the happily ever after I planned, but a satisfying resolution in its own way. If you've made it this far, Thanks for following along my journey. Your support meant the world during one of the toughest times in my life. Onward and upward, as they say.